hopefully. I don't look like a complete day. So.
Good afternoon and welcome to All About Lincoln podcast. Today we are with my good friend Mary, how do I say your last name? LoMonaco, and she is running for town council, so we were going to have a discussion and see where she stands on issues, and then you as the audience get to decide for yourselves what you think. All right, it's been a long time since I've seen you, since the planning board.
Yes.
You've done, I remember, so for those of you who don't know what the planning board is, say you have a business or something and you want to expand or just build, you come to the planning board with your plans and we decide whether or not it's zoned for the area and whether or not it's good for the community. So we did a lot of good work there.
I would make sure that it meets the requirements set out by the council for zones and for the type of businesses that are allowed in those zones.
Definitely. So, from the planning board, what have you been up to since? You seem to be quite the busy person.
It's actually gone by in a bit of a blur. I'd actually had an injury, so stepped down from the planning board so I could recover.
Yeah.
Changed jobs. I went from working at IBM to working at Manpower Group, which is a workforce management firm. I think most people are familiar with Manpower.
Yep.
I worked for their IT branch. That's my background, not surprisingly, having spent almost 20 years at IBM.
Yep.
From there, they kept me busy. I actually started with a very small team of 3 and was given the remit to work with the sales lead to grow the business. We grew up by over 300%. My team went from 3 to a direct report team of about 42, and we oversaw another 1,000 consultants that we had deployed at places like Microsoft, IBM, Google, etc.
Awesome. So what makes it so that now you are ready to be in the town council, and what do you think that you will do once you get in that position?
Well, I'd actually had people who know me talking to me, asked me to run, and I was always like, no, I travel too much. Planning board was about the limit of what I could deal with in terms of preparation and being able to serve. So Manpower Group did a lot of layoffs in January, and they decided to change direction and eliminated my boss, myself, my peers, and all of our people under me. It was a massive layoff. And I was very lucky. I had a couple of my former employees had started a new startup called Scale Team 6. And they were like, well, you're the best boss we've ever had.
Aww.
And we really want you to come and join us in our startup because we need you. So it's a startup that helps other startups succeed in developing go-to-market strategies. So that role now means while I have an increased level of role, I don't have to travel as much. We've built the startup with the deliberate intention of having a better work-life balance.
Yep.
So that I have time to dedicate to spending time in the community, new activities, being able to take on a broader set of activities than my job previously afforded me. It was one of those, you work all the hours of the day.
Yeah.
And that's not sustainable. They lay you off as you see the end.
Yes. So how long have you lived in Lincoln itself?
Almost 9 years. Actually, I was counting up. I said more than 8, which was accurate. I think it was August 9 years ago.
So where do you think the direction of Lincoln is going? Is it in a positive way? I know that there's a couple more businesses that you can see. As a town council member, do you see yourself as being able to be part of that change? And where do you see yourself as part of that?
That's actually a really good question. I always look and go back a little bit in history because I've only been here 9 years.
Yeah.
And people, all you have to do is look at the street names, right? And you see that people have been here for generations. Everything that I've seen, Lincoln used to be a much more thriving, busier, more dynamic town. Doesn't take too much of a trip to the Historical Society to have a look and see where it was to where it is now. There's been a slight improvement as new businesses open and I see some houses getting rehabbed, but when you look at the population of the town it skews very heavily towards older individuals.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with getting older, a lot of wisdom and benefits that come with that. But what that does mean is when you look at the dynamics where young people don't have the opportunities, they leave. That leaves older individuals and middle-aged individuals like me. I don't see that as a good thing for the town's future. I think you'll find it declining unless we find ways to actually energize and attract people to the town.
So what type of ideas do you have that you think might work once you get on the town council?
I think the first one is jobs are very clearly one of the biggest demands. Not just for attracting new people, but good jobs for people who live here already. If you look around, and it was interesting, I was talking to the fire department the other day. They were kind enough to spend some time with me. And I was asking why the increase in staffing at the fire department.
Yeah.
Well, when you go back to when the mill was here, most of the fire department was staffed with volunteers. Why? Because you had a mill with a large dynamic population of people who worked in the town and had time to devote out of their work hours to things like volunteering on the fire department. We don't have that anymore. People who do work and are of working age are often working elsewhere and commuting, which doesn't leave them the time to be able to dedicate to their communities. So jobs have to be first and foremost, and jobs that are here that people can actually have that work-life balance that we're talking about. They're not spending an hour commuting to Bangor, 2 hours to Augusta, heaven forbid 4 hours down to Portland, right? In order to have a really good job. So in order to have those jobs, you actually have to have businesses in town that are able to supply those jobs. It doesn't mean we need to be the size of Bangor, it doesn't mean you need to grow to that size, but it does mean you need to have a thriving economic base for people. Now there's a couple of ways to do that. One is attracting larger businesses, like those that are expected to construct and set up on a mill site. Those are your very large businesses in the timber products industry, making the most of what Lincoln actually has to offer. And that historic expertise and access to timber, I actually think it's very smart. If you look at a lot of the startups in Maine, they're focused, in fact I'm involved with the startup community, the startup business. Most startups in Maine are what they call green or blue industries. They're either based on forest products or they're based on, driving their commerce from the ocean. That's your blue commerce, right? There's tech to support them, but the vast majority fall into one of those two categories. So I think the strategy that the Economic Development Board and the town have taken to let's redevelop that mill using the timber products theme, very smart. But I don't think it's diversified enough. The other thing that you see as an economic trend is the ability for people to start small businesses that are single and sole proprietor, may only employ one person, but they can work from anywhere. And that's a lot of the AI. Is something that we're really involved in and very time consuming for me, trying to keep up with a lot of that in my job, right? But you can, using AI, build products that solve people's problems. You don't have to have a massive team to do it.
Right.
Now, if I look at that, I go, what would attract somebody like that to Lincoln?
Right.
Now, if they love the outdoors, very good chance.
Yeah.
But other than that, especially if you're a young person, what is there to do for those folks?
And I totally agree. And I think that's definitely something that is challenging that you're going to have to face, especially given that, what I'm hearing a lot from people are the idea of taxes. And the taxes are going up and they're pricing people out of their homes. And what is your, I don't know, not your answer to it, but what would you tell people who are worried about taxes and being just priced right out of their houses?
So I think the challenge when it comes to taxation is a couple of things. One, you have to have a more diverse base. There is just, I have run the numbers, as you probably heard from the Chamber of Commerce event, right? you either have to cut your spending dramatically, which, let's be really candid, there isn't a lot of fat in the budget. People complain about the town manager's salary, they complain about the increased size of the fire department or the police department, and those are certainly things that need to be looked at. But quite honestly, there isn't a whole lot of there to cut unless you are willing to have a significant drop in the services. And let's be clear, you cut the fire department budget, for example, and reduce the fire department shifts down to maybe relying on the county for after hours call or things like that, what you're going to see is your home insurance rates will go up because the rating for the town on how good the fire services are will drop. It's actually funny, the scale goes the other way. It goes up to like a 9 is really bad and a 1 is really good.
Okay.
Right? But we're right now, I think, at a 3 or 4, which is pretty good. 1 is very hard to get. If that scale goes up for a jump from 3 to 4 to 7 to 8, every indicator I can find says that's about $500 a year increase in your insurance premiums.
Yeah.
So you'll get some tax savings, but they'll be far offset by your other increases.
Right.
So that's why I don't think the answer is let's just go in and slash the town budget, let's slash the services. In order to keep taxes, keep cap on taxes, frankly, you have to expand your base.
Right.
Now the mill rate has been reduced this year. The town has asked for this reassessment, which should hopefully see the values come down so that people will experience some relief from their property taxes. But the way out of that constraint is actually grow your tax base.
Right.
And again, that's where you're looking at business, that's where you're looking at more taxpayers for whom it's not that hit that it is for fixed income people.
So I guess my next question, because obviously you say grow the tax base, how do you make Lincoln more economically viable for businesses to come in?
You're actually in a really good spot, to be perfectly candid. I don't think we've always exploited it in the way that we could. So for example, it's right near the interstate. It's right on a major rail line. It's also on a major river. So for any business that's looking at transit of goods and services, you have the infrastructure here to build on.
Yep.
You also have an airport in Bangor.
Yeah.
So when I was...
Actually, you have one right here in Lincoln too.
Do as well.
And the mill actually has natural gas, which helps bring down the cost of energy.
Exactly. So these are the things that fall into the assets. I don't think they've always been well promoted. I don't think we've always been well hooked in to a lot of the economic incubators. So, for example, Startup Maine has a big conference every year in Portland. There was nobody there from Lincoln. I went because of my job, right?
Yeah.
There are people that are establishing entirely new ways of construction and building houses. And you've got the UMaine, which is less than an hour away here, that's 3D printing houses, right, out of timber composite products. Those are the types of connections that really need to be exploited. And to be fair, I think the economic development team have made some advances. They're doing what they can with what they have. But you have Ruth, for example, who's still trying to do an assessor job, as well as economic development. Those are 2 full-time jobs.
Yep.
And which brings me to another issue. It's not just how do you encourage development so that you encourage businesses to come to Lincoln. It's also how do you make sure that you're actually collecting the money that you're owed.
Right.
And because you have one person trying to do 2 revenue producing jobs, which blows my mind, to be perfectly honest, you need a full-time assessor. That full-time assessor needs to be ensuring that people, particularly people who it's their second home, come from out of state, bought unimproved land, put a house on it, but are still getting taxed on unimproved land.
Right.
That needs to make sure that that's not happening. need to make sure that we're going after the taxes that are owed so that they're paid, so it's fair for everyone.
Yep.
Right. Revenue leakage is what we call it where I work, and it makes sure you get all of the incomings that you're billing.
Yep.
So when I look at Lincoln's position for business, it's actually really good. When you look at, and I know some people have concerns over climate change and its validity, but I think living in Maine, you can see, how things have been changing. I have people who are telling me they used to send their kids to Halloween trick-or-treating, having to buy a costume that was big enough to fit over their snowsuit, right? So as you look at that climate change, ironically enough, Maine is one of the states that stands to benefit economically from a climate that is getting warmer.
Yes, unlike Florida.
Unlike Florida, which is going to be underwater, right? So when I look at those trends, they're actually very positive, and there are things that we can absolutely do to attract people here. I think Maine in general is a very well kept secret. I don't think people outside of New England really understand what a treasure it is. And I think a lot of Mainers would like to keep it very quiet.
Right.
And so there's a balance that you need to strike. But honestly, with the economic trends that you see, with this ability to be solopreneurs, for example, with attracting business on the basis of all the really strong and solid things that you have in Lincoln, I actually think with promotion, with actually getting in and going to things like Startup Maine, like some of these other conventions to actually not, advertise on, national television, but, targeted recruitment, I think you actually could do a lot of really awesome economic development here in this town.
So why would someone want to vote for you? Like, what do you think that you have to offer to the voters?
Well, that's a really good question. As you and I were talking before, campaigning, I'm terrible at campaigning.
Yes.
My background is really diverse. I've been to an awful lot of places. I'm very good with understanding systems, understanding processes, understanding people, and understanding money. So part of the reason that I actually decided to run was when I was sitting in a town council office and a meeting, and this was when Ruth was explaining the issues they'd had with the tax system.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, if that's what they're telling you, no. Let me help, because that's one of those things that I do all day, every day for work.
Yeah.
I have a set of skills. I would like to be able to make them available to the town. I want to serve. I want to help. I want to be part of how can we bring, this kind of future to this town, because I love it. I've lived now in Lincoln longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. And I was born in Georgia.
Yeah.
My family live in Florida. As we were talking, my uncles helped build Disney. My aunt worked for NASA. They're all at the Cape.
Very diverse, yes.
Very diverse. Lived in Australia. Have worked with international accounts with IBM. So I've been to India. I've been to the Philippines. I've been to Poland for work. And it gives you a perspective and a way of learning new things that may help.
Yeah.
And literally, that's why I'm running. I call it volunteering. I'm volunteering. If people are willing to elect me, I would love to bring the skills that I have to actually try and help encourage growth in Lincoln, to try and solve some of the issues that we have, and also help you celebrate what a great place this is. I think, we get very negative and we look at all the things that we don't have or that aren't happening, or, this is bad and that is bad. I'm like, we live in a beautiful place. We have very community-minded people who are there for one another. And that's worth holding on to and celebrating and growing responsibly so our kids have a future. So that they can stay here, so that people can move here and experience all the wonderful things that I've had the opportunity to do since moving here.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for this wonderful discussion. And so vote this November.
Thank you. Appreciate it.